So I just started recording, just so you know. So hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us and welcome to our Rock Talk on military spouse experience. I'm very excited to host this event and spread the knowledge of military spouse and to honor them for Military Spouse Appreciation Day on May 6th. My name is Grace Lawton-Slager, and I am the Graduate Assistant for Multicultural Programming and for the Veterans Center here on campus. Tonight, joining us will be three panelists, Bernadette Schmeltz, Salwa Vandergrift, and Ryan Schleffler. I probably messed those up, so I'm very sorry, who I'll introduce in a second. These panelists will be given the opportunity to answer the following questions. What is your experience as a military spouse? Each panelist will be allotted 10 minutes to discuss their experience. To keep this time efficient, we ask that if you have any questions, to save them for the end in the Q&A section. If needed, you can also use the chat function where you can put the questions so they will not be missed. Once again, thank you for joining us. All right, so I'm going to start with Bernadette Schmeltz. Dr. Schmeltz is an assistant professor in the Doctorate of Occupational Therapy program here at Slippery Rock University. She has over 21 years of clinical experience working as an occupational therapist in diverse settings such as acute care, home health, outpatient pediatrics, and inpatient rehabilitation and skilled nursing. She has been a military spouse for over 10 years and serves as an official caregiver through the VA Caregiver Program. She brings a unique perspective as both military spouse and a healthcare provider. All right, Salwa Vandergrift. Mrs. Salwa Vandergrift is the Arabic instructor for SRU's Department of Modern Languages and Cultures, where she began teaching in 2015. Since beginning here at Slippery Rock University, she has achieved her certificate to teach classes online, established the Arabic Club, participated in many trips, and hosted several events. Some of the trips were to Pittsburgh's and Michigan's Arabic communities, where they enjoyed fine Middle Eastern cuisines. Some of the events hosted involved guest speakers, belly dancing, henna tattoos, bingos, and several other fun things. She then created the Middle Eastern Studies Certificate and the Arabic Minor. Professor Vandergrift proudly teaches all levels from beginning to advanced. Her past education includes a BS in mechanical engineering and an MS in thermal power. And currently she is in her master's program for Arabic language and logistics at CalU. Inspired by the conflict she witnessed in her home of Iraq, Professor Vandergrift decided to take a job with the US military in Iraq. She was a Department of Defense contractor serving on the American Military Judge Advocate General team from 2007 to 2008. Professor Vandergrift and her team proved to be an integral part of creating the Iraqi court system, which is still in use today. She is married to her husband, Jason Vandergrift, who served 22 years in the Army and is currently retired. She is a mother of 2 children, 2 jobs, and 4 cats. All right, and for Ryan Schleffler, Dr. Ryan Schleffler was born and raised and lives in Youngstown, Ohio. He serves all over the Western United States in the Army Corps, I think I said that right, as a wildlands firefighter after college, and eventually married a woman on active duty in the Army stationed in Anchorage, Arkansas, after earning his PhD in English. Dr. Schleffler adopted her daughter and they had one together, but injuries sustained by his wife in basic training led to medical problems, which resulted in substance use issues, and they issued a divorce in 2016. Currently, Dr. Schleffler is one of the co-chairs of the President's Commission on Military and Veterans Affairs here at Slippery Rock, where his experience and as a military spouse drives his passion to keep military students negotiating the regulatory labyrinth that is the VA to help students utilize the benefits that they have earned through service. Thank you all for joining us, and I'd like to start with Dr. Schmeltz. So I just ask you the question, what is your experience as a military spouse?
That's a broad question. Where do I begin? I'll go first over, my husband was in the military for 7 years. He was an infantryman, so he was combat arms. He served 2 tours, 2 18-month tours in Iraq. He was in Iraq when some of the more kind of significant events occurred. So his first tour kind of led to a lot of issues and problems for him for when he came back. He did receive a Purple Heart for some injuries that he sustained due to an IED explosion and that sort of thing. So I was not with him during his tours in Iraq. I met him when he returned home. So I don't know my husband Jerome prior to him serving in the military. I only know of him afterwards. So I met him after his last tour, and really helped him kind of put the pieces back together. And so I was going through a divorce, and he was kind of coming back from Iraq and just trying to transition back into regular civilian life. So we kind of helped each other in that respect, but I really tried to focus on having him really integrate into the VA and navigating that system. And he continued to be part of the military for an additional year. So he re-upped for one more year while we were together. And I noticed a lot of significant issues that he was dealing with as far as depression, anxiety, PTSD related symptoms, sleep issues, pain, hearing issues, the whole gamut that I'm sure everybody on the panel kind of has heard about. So I really tried to be a support system to him. He suffered from substance abuse issues, a lot of alcohol when he returned. It was always a roller coaster ride with him. He would go to appointments, he wouldn't go. I really kind of had to take over full-time caregiving for him just to make sure he was taking his medications, going to his appointments, making sure he got sleep, just kind of taking over everything for that aspect. And it was really pushing him to kind of file for his disability. And it was a long time coming that it was, I think it was 3 appeals and a lawyer later, 6 years later, it took us to finally get his disability claims in. I could say now where he's at is a completely different person than when I met him, coming off of that tour. He has better coping skills, but it's still a day by day struggle. So it's not something that he can be cured from. It's something that he manages on a daily basis. He struggles with it still daily. And I feel, I would say typical spouses of non-military, they don't understand what we go through, and it's often hard to kind of describe relationship issues because they don't understand a lot of the dynamics. And I may be at work trying to grade a paper, or anybody else could be just at work grading papers or working with their students. I have to worry about, is my husband having a stress, is he having an anxiety moment, or is he stressing out? Is he having suicidal ideations? Do I need to deal with that sort of thing? Do I need to get home and get him assistance? That's the kind of stuff that I've dealt with. He's had multiple suicide attempts. I've had to put him in the hospital. So there's a whole other side to the stressors that we deal with, I think, on a daily basis. And I don't know, Grace, would you like to ask any more questions? I might have gone off on a tangent.
No, that was really good. I really appreciate that. And I'm sure I already have some questions written to ask later on as well. So we'll move on. Professor Vandergrift, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to also talk about the mental health with our veterans, especially. And I don't know where to start from, but I'm going to start with, you started to with saying what my husband did. He was infantry as well. And he, as you mentioned, he served 22 years in the army. He went all over the place, twice to Iraq, twice to Afghanistan, and I don't know, I think 2 other places I can't remember. But during all these deployment, I wasn't married to Jason, actually. We met in Columbus, in Georgia. He was stationed for Benning at the time. Uh, from my experience with living there, surrounded by a lot of military spouses happen to be, I know the struggle they went through when their husbands goes to deployment like that. Remember, back in the days, the deployment was about 15 months, if I'm not wrong. And then now it's went down to 12 for the Army. And remember, that's a long time. Your husband or wife, they're far away from you, they change. They come back after a year or 15 months, different people. You literally welcoming a different person every time that person go to deployment and coming back. It starts like, I see it a lot with especially the young couples. They are in the early 20s or even late 20s. They're still young and they can't handle that stress, especially if there are kids involved in the middle. Uh, Again, I didn't have to go through that personally, and we were about to go through that, but we moved actually here to Pennsylvania when Jason took the ROTC job in Slippery Rock. So he was the master sergeant for 4 years in Slippery Rock. And that saved us the deployment thing, but he was away every summer, the whole summer. So every summer, Jason's away. I was by myself with kids. A lot of things he missed, especially we had our daughter was recently born. He missed her first walk, her first word, her first everything, basically, first teeth. He missed a lot, and beside that, he was gone a lot. So I was doing everything by myself. And remember, when you move, your family, your parents, your sisters, they won't be moving with you. You basically going to start a new life by yourself, navigating everything alone while your husband is gone, or your wife, of course. That's a lot. Even for the spouse to just be dealing with that, you don't have friends, you have to find new friends. And moving, my personal struggle, moving to Pennsylvania, where we're not surrounded by a base, I didn't find a lot of people, they share the same experience I do share. Verse when we were in Columbus, Georgia, we were next to Fort Benning. That was a plus. Everyone, understand each other. We all didn't have family. I can just call any friend there, say, hey, I'm not feeling well. Can you watch my son or daughter? And they will be okay. Versus here, it's very hard to make friends. That struggle mentally I suffered from. I argue with Jason for a whole year when we moved here. I kept telling him it's all the Army's fault, and I shoveling all the snow. So oh, I want to go back to Columbus in Georgia, and I really liked it there. I have to say that. One other thing is not just the wife mental health, the husband that who you meet a new person almost every time he comes back that you don't recognize, and your kids, every move, they go through so much. Our son at the time, he was 6. When we moved from Columbus in Georgia to here, he did not speak for 6 months. He won't talk to friends. He doesn't want to make friends. He kept talking about his best friend Harrison. He missed Harrison. He missed base. He missed Fort Benning. That's all what we talked about. He went to the school. He said, I want to be in the Army like my dad. No one wanted to be in the Army in the school in Grove City. It just was that thing for our kids' mental health as well. Luckily, my son with therapy and everything, he's fine. He's playing football. He's doing good now. He's 13. But again, and that's why my husband decided to retire. Unfortunately, he really wanted to stay in the Army. He loves the Army, but he said, my family is going so much. and that's the sacrifice, the whole family with mental health, between the spouse, the person in the military, between PTSD and all of that, and the kids struggle. Now, there's a lot of other struggle, but I'm going to leave it to Dr. Ryan. Maybe he will share something. I hope we didn't take all the talk from you, Dr. Ryan. So I'm going to stop right here.
No, you are all set. Yeah, you can go ahead and go for it. Also, I realized I said Arkansas and I meant Alaska for Ryan's intro, so I'm very sorry about that. But you can go ahead and answer the question. What is your experience?
Yeah, I have some similar experiences, I think, a little bit with Salwa and with Dr. Schmeltz and things that they said. Of course, my experience is a little bit different based, we have just some different gender experiences. I'm a male who was a military spouse of a female Army, individual in the Army. And so I was, as they described as well, I was the primary caregiver for our children during that time, which was a little bit unique, I think, in the military community for the male. Not, again, unheard of, but a little outside the norm in those experiences. So anyways, yeah, I can start out with some background as well. Perhaps that might be instructive. I never personally served in the military. However, I was married to an individual who's a medical engineer in the Army. Worked in hospitals, mainly fixing hospital equipment, not a combat role or anything like that. When I met my now ex-wife, she had been in the military for a couple years, and she had cracked her pelvis during some type of training thing and was on some extended leave back where she was from, her hometown in Carson City, Nevada, which is where I was teaching at the time. And that's where I met her and her daughter. Like, I think not always, but with many of the people I have talked to, perhaps the current panelists notwithstanding. But we didn't know each other super long before we got married. I think sometimes that's common when people are leaving to go other places on deployments or what have you. And that was definitely the case. We only knew each other for a few months before we got married, and I adopted her daughter, and then she went back up to Anchorage, Alaska, and I stayed in Nevada while she finished out her service. I can say I concur with a lot of the things that the other panelists noted. You do definitely feel like you're meeting a new person every time they come home. Having a spouse in the military takes a lot of trust. I'll put it that way too. With a more integrated military, obviously, they meet other people, members of the opposite sex, perhaps, if that's, their orientation. Maybe member same sex, if that's their orientation. There's obviously relationships that form in the crucible of that military experience the spouse doesn't get to participate in or maybe even know that much about. And so certainly that created some major tensions in our personal relationship. Perhaps that has more to do, maybe not with all military spouses' experience, but just the individual I was married to. But, I became aware of some infidelity in that experience, some relationships she was having with individuals in the military. That definitely certainly put a strain on things as well. And when she got out, like, the injury wasn't taken care of, and it really messed with her. We kind of didn't realize the extent to the damage that she had until she became pregnant with like our daughter that we were having together. And of course, since it was a pelvic injury, that was came an issue. And so I kind of was helping her, trying to get the designated nation she needed from the military to get the proper type of medical benefits, working with the VA, trying to get her DD-214 changed, which, if you're not aware, the DD-214 is like the discharge document, and it's really important because it how you're classified on there determines what type of benefits you can receive, etc. And that was a mess because the way her DD-214 came out, without any type of medical discharge, she wasn't available for disability, and it took a long time. In fact, she didn't even get put on disability until, I don't know, at least 2 years after we ended up divorcing. And we were married like 5 or 6 years. So, I mean, this was, I don't know, 5-6 year process. It probably took us 2 or 3 years to get her GI Bill money to go through. And I really, yeah, as an educator myself at a university like at this one, of course, I believe in that. So, I was really trying to help her get those benefits so she could get a college degree after she got out. And that was a really frustrating experience. So, yeah, I think I hear a lot. I didn't think my experience would be that germane or relevant, perhaps other than the panelists. I thought I was going to be the odd person out. And I hear a lot of things that echo true with my experience. Just some of the things you don't really think about, like value system stuff that comes up. Like, I really didn't want my kids to be raised in like a daycare scenario, but I lived across the country from my family. They're back here in Ohio where I live now, but at the time I was in Nevada teaching at Western Nevada College, so I don't really know anybody out there. And then I was like a brand new dad for the first time of like a 6-year-old who didn't know me that well. And then later on, an infant, and that certainly takes its toll. Putting your kids in daycare, you don't really want to, but you have to because your spouse is gone. You don't really have anybody else to watch. Little things you don't think about that might seem kind of silly, but like the time change, like just trying to talk to the person and have like a consistent time where they talk to the kids or whatever, but they're like hours different. That can be I don't know, it's just like maybe it's just me, it's like a frustration. Right, like sometimes when they come back, they've been gone for a while, you don't really feel like you recognize them. The kids is this period of time where they kind of have to get reaccustomed to the other parent being there instead of just this presence that you kind of talk about or see on a screen. And then about the time they get used to it, they go back. So yeah, there can be a lot of strain during that experience as well as afterwards in trying to get to the benefits that are these individuals have earned. And it does oftentimes feel like you're going hat in hand and begging for something, a privilege where it's not. It's something that was earned. And, the amount of time talking to people, setting an appointment 2 months from now, and you get there, and then you got to set another one and it's 6 months before you talk to 3 different people. All that stuff is really frustrating. And I think oftentimes, depending on the experience of the actual military service person, they may just be done with it. That's certainly where my wife was. She just wasn't willing to fight with the military or the VA for stuff. And I was, because I'm kind of new to the thing. I was like, oh, come on, it can't be that bad. Like, you're owed this stuff and you have this form, just send it in. And it's like, oh, you don't even get it. And you learn quickly. You're in for an education. That scenario is very frustrating, and unnecessarily so often. And it sometimes just seems petty. And I can see why so many individuals just are like, you know what, it's not even worth it. And so having like that advocacy of somebody in kind of the professional education environment, I was willing to go to bat with that, with advocacy and make calls and, but it is very, very frustrating. She definitely wouldn't have gone to college if I, hadn't kind of gotten involved in helping her get those benefits. I think a lot of things that individuals are promised in going in the recruitment phase, it's not that those things don't exist at all or it's total BS, but it is nowhere near as seamless of a process as one might suppose, as it would seem in a wealthy country like this, like it could be, given our budget and how we spend money on the military, et cetera. So, often maybe some of our students can speak to that too, though. Like there's a recruitment effort and getting individuals to college, and then you get there, and now you're in it, and so it can feel a little more onerous at that point. And of course, when you get out, you have to find a job, and when you get out of the military, you got to find a way to get your benefits, and so yeah, I think in that regard, sometimes the military aspect, there's a lot of stuff on the front end that seems like cool. And I'm not saying that it's falsely promised, but it doesn't always play out precisely that way. And certainly you have to advocate for yourself as a current and former military service person a little bit more than individuals might expect. And sometimes, for whatever reason, they're just not interested in doing that work. I mean, just trying to get my wife's medical discharge paperwork changed so that she could apply for a handicap parking spot with this hip issue, not have to walk across, like, took years. And it's crazy. Like a private citizen, it wouldn't take that long to try to go through disability, services and organizations, or the BMV or DMV, whatever it is. But with the military, there's definitely an extra hurdle. There's just there's always extra hoops to jump through. And so again, I hope it's not coming across as negative. I'm certainly not negative about the military, although my experience with being a military spouse probably held up some more frustrations than it did moments of glory or joy and wonder. But again, it's probably just the personality of the individual I was married to, and the dependency on painkillers as a result of this injury that didn't probably heal up right. Certainly added to that, and that's kind of a whole nother thing. But as Dr. Schmeltz mentioned, like substance abuse and having to walk through that with somebody's a thing. And sometimes you don't. It just sometimes you realize that the best way to help you and the kids is to put some distance between yourself and them in that scenario. And I wish that was the only time I'd ever heard that from a military spouse, but it's not. It's not. So there's that. There's some hard realities, but anyways, I don't know. Yeah, maybe I answered those questions. It's pretty subjective. We're all gonna, have really different experiences with that. Some of the other panelists had individuals deployed in combat, so I can kind of imagine what they're laying awake at night thinking about, knowing what I was laying awake at night thinking about when my wife is stationed in Anchorage, which is not a combat zone. Maybe with the weather, but not any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, I can only imagine and deeply sympathize, because there's certainly that aspect of not when are they coming home, but the if factor. If you're an infantry person deployed in a combat zone, as those spouses were.
Thank you all for sharing. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate all of you guys being so open as well. I know sometimes it is a hard topic to talk about, but I think it does need to be talked about, especially for future military spouses, especially people, the ones on our campus. Maybe there's some in this Zoom right now. So we are going to open up to a Q&A thing. I do have a few questions from people who couldn't make it, but I'm just also going to start with one of my questions. So you guys talked about a lot of mental health issues and trust and all that stuff, and mention of therapy for children. Can you tell me about the resources that you guys reached out to possibly help other people that may be going through this experience?
I can start. For my son, personally, we just went through our primary care physician, and he did refer us to basically counseling at the time. It has been several years, 7 years. So I can't remember the name of the counseling service, but we went to that. for my son. Of course, my husband personally, he used the VA in Butler. Um, and it's a wonderful facility. I know we talked about all the bad things with the Army, and I feel bad honestly after talking about it like that. But
Me too.
I personally think the VA, at least in Butler, they have done a fantastic job. At least with my husband. Uh, he goes there. It's a free service. Actually, I have good news for you all. My husband, he just got his implant, two implants actually in the VA, and he's the first one who got a free implant. That's a thousands of dollars.
Yes, it is.
He got that for free, just so you know. To the point, I think he was on the news or whatever, but he was very happy. It was a longer process to get those implants, two teeth that he missed. Uh, but it's a great service. Again, you cannot fix everything laws, especially with PTSD. It's hard. It's a long process between therapy, medicine, and all of that, and family understanding. But sometimes goodbye could be the answer, unfortunately, for a lot of these cases. So it does require a lot of understanding and patience and therapy and support. I hope Dr. Schmaltz, if I'm saying that correctly, hopefully you have better resources than mine.
I have resources. I would say you maybe have better experiences. I my husband loves a psychiatrist. He's had her since the very beginning, before he even had disability. He always says he would marry her if he wasn't married to me. So he loves her. He'll never leave her. And she's in Aspinwall. I'm sorry, she's the psychologist. The psychiatrist he did not have as good of an experience with, and that was the one that was managing his medications. The medications, he felt like he was being kind of used as a guinea pig and testing new medications on him. So a lot of medications is what landed him multiple times in the hospital. So at this point, after and coping skills. So I worked with him who had speech and language therapy as well to work on executive functioning skills. I pretty much do all the OT with him because the OT down at VA doesn't really address anything beyond basic ADLs, which I have in my own time placed capstone students. Jenna can speak to this because I've placed capstone students down at the VA Pittsburgh and in Butler. And now they're actually expanding into community-based programs and hopefully hiring some new OTs. So that's my way of like improving the VA situation.
Yeah, that's good.
Therapy and how we can better serve veterans. So noticing those gaps in services, as a caregiver, I've been trying to kind of use my resources that I can to kind of benefit veterans as a whole. As far as my children go, the little ones don't really know my husband fresh out of the military. They're 8 and 10 now, but my older ones were with my ex-husband, but my husband's pretty much raised them since they were 4 and 2, and they do unfortunately suffer significant anxiety because of some of the issues with my husband's PTSD. So they go to family counseling services and then also to children's pediatrics for counseling, just to kind of deal with a lot of the anxiety that they've had to kind of deal with. And it's unfortunate, like as Ryan has said, like as a mother, you want to protect your children, but you want to keep the family unit as a whole, and also that maintaining that balance of you understand where your spouse is coming from. My husband has seen horrible things. He's had to do things that are unthinkable, and you don't want to give up on him. You want to get him the help he needs, and you want to protect your children too. So trying to be the the wife that he needs you to be, the caregiver and the mother, and hold everything together. And it can be increasingly overwhelming. I'd probably say the only thing that I have not gotten is probably resources for myself. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right. Salwa? Yeah, resources for myself. As the caregiver support program for the VA, they offer it to me all the time, but I never have time to take it. So I would definitely spread that as a message for military spouses, is to always take care of yourself. I do as I say, I guess, not as I do.
I agree with that. One thing that I think my experience, or like I suffered from or was disadvantaged by, was like because I was back with like where she was from, taking care of the kids, not on a base or anything. I didn't have like a military spouse support network at all. I mean, none. I mean, my wife was in another state, 2 time zones over. See her every couple months. That was it. You know, I didn't have family out there. Her dad was out there and he'd help a little bit. But they were kind of estranged, so like that would cause problems with my wife if I asked for his help and stuff. So it was all kind of on the DL. Yeah, and then my wife didn't want to get help when she came out. Like there was just like, you know, she was not willing to go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. She actively fought against that. You know, she was very like, you know, we were younger, but like she's very physically fit, and the injury was like, you know, she wanted to be a physical trainer, and so she's one of those like rub some dirt on it, and asking for help is a weakness thing, which I find to be very stereotypical military. I probably don't want to insult anybody's spouse or anything who's not like that, but I work with military students all the time. I've been in this environment for years, and I find that to be a relatively consistent and understandable, I suppose, given the values you're trained with, et cetera, the training you go through, mentality. But that became frustrating. I feel like if she would have gotten help earlier, then she probably wouldn't have developed the substance abuse stuff as a way to like cope with the stuff she couldn't cope with. But there's a real reticence from her to like seek that stuff out. And it just got to the point where it was like, you know, I mean, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think too, like the individual service members who come back, like there's just how willing and open they are, how invested they are in their own recovery. And I do mean recovery from the trauma of that experience. That's what it is. It's going to take years, like, and recovery from a substance addiction would take. Like, it's recovery. You went through a really traumatic experience, something that we tend to define now in the medical and psychological community as a quote unquote moral injury. It's what PTSD is now defined as, is an injury to like your deeply held values. That's an injury it's hard to bounce back from. That's not a physical wound, you know? And so you have to be there has to be a willingness to seek that out. If there's a denial, like I don't have any problems, everything's totally cool, there's only so much you can do, you know? I mean, there's only so far that's going to go. So yeah, I have no idea where I was going with that. I'm sorry.
That was good. Thank you. Also, all 3 of you guys are very strong people. I give you guys all so much credit. You don't even realize. So does anyone else have any questions they would like to ask before I move forward asking questions? All right, from Alex, she asked, were any of you ever involved in family readiness group? And do you think it's a beneficial program?
I was not.
No. I think that is for when they go on deployments, right? Before they go.
I'm not familiar with this program, which sounds interesting.
Sandra, where is this program? Can you tell us more about it so we will maybe have an answer?
Yeah, Alex, would you like to share about it?
Yeah, I can. So at least in my experience as a military brat growing up, when I lived most notably in Fort Drum in New York, if any of you guys are familiar with it. We had this program. I don't think it's not specifically for families that have a spouse going through deployment. I think it's just in general for like anything that you guys go through. It's kind of like connects you to, I mean, as you guys know, it's mainly the moms, like other military families. So they'd kind of have like programming based on like we'd have Easter every year, or we'd have daycare programs, or just holidays and other just activities. But I just want to know if you guys had, because there's always drama. I'm sure you guys have heard of that. So I just want to know if that you've ever had a similar experience, or if it was beneficial to you, because it definitely was for me. So that's about it.
The only thing I can think of, I'm not really sure where's the name of the programs, but there are so many programs when we were close to Fort Benning in Georgia. And that's the beauty of living close to base. You get those benefits. I do remember the Infantry Museum, for example, had a lot of family programs, the free movies and free swimming parties. I can't recall if there's any name associated with these programs or not, but there were so many things for military when we were in Columbus. Versus when we moved here, again, just because we're remote area, it's far away from base, I didn't experience anything like that. And that was a little bit shocking and disappointing to me personally. One thing I can say highly about the VA in Butler, they do send emails, I have to admit, a lot of emails with a lot of resources. It just, unfortunately, I don't read them because I'm so busy with work. And it's on my end, it's my fault. Yeah, I guess we just start navigating on our own after just being around civilian more. I hope that answered the question. But yeah, I'll look into it and see if there's anything like that in here.
I don't know if that's available everywhere. If it is, that'd be something that would be good to add to the website, Jenna. She's on.
Yeah, I could have definitely benefited from the types of programs you're describing, but I wasn't on a base. I was just kind of back at home, private life, because of my job. It was my job. I had a good job, and I don't want to leave it to go up to Anchorage after we got married. So yeah, the childcare thing would have been great.
All right, thank you, Alex. I really appreciate that. Do we have any other questions from anyone before I ask some more? All right, this is from Dane. He asks, what do you feel would help with you dealing with a military life as a spouse before and after deployment?
For deployment myself, because I did not know him before deployment. I personally don't know if I could even have handled him being away in the position he was in, being in Iraq for that long, and him being infantry. I am such a high anxiety person. I think I don't know how I would have handled it. I think God put him in my life at the right time, and that's the way it was meant to happen. So I don't know, as far as being prepared, I probably could never have been prepared for something like that. And I give women and men who have their spouses go on deployments for that long in those types of situations all the credit in the world. They handle that. For post-deployment, I think that the transitions programs that maybe if they provided spouses and military veterans on the way when they do come home, maybe education on like what is going to happen when they come home, things that they may experience, signs and symptoms they may experience, what things are going to look like. Because my husband, when he came home, he basically came home and had when he came home, he didn't have any family support. Nobody picked him up at the airport. He hitchhiked his way home and went right to the bar. So he was also homeless for a year between 2 deployments, and then when he came home. So he had multiple bouts of homelessness as well. So there was a lot of other, compounding factors that he dealt with before he met me. So I think just the transition and education that the military could be better at providing, even if the VA could set something up like that, education on like what to expect and how to transition, and having those resources already made available as far as counseling and that sort of thing for when the veterans come out of service, I think would be a tremendous value, so that the veteran's just not dumped off and it's like, okay, I'm home. I was literally just fighting in a war yesterday, and today I'm home in the middle of my town, and I don't even know how to navigate like walking down the road because I'm used to stopping traffic or looking for an IED, walking down the middle of the street. So I just know, like, from what, things that I've heard from my husband, that's where he struggled a lot. And just not really being aware of some of the things to look for with my husband. Like, I think if I had known, my husband came in and did a presentation for my students, and I told him, if I had known a lot of the information that you gave my students before I married you, I would have been much better as a wife from the get-go on how to handle just communicating with you. Because when communicating with a veteran that has gone through the things that he's gone through, it's way different than communicating with just your average person. So I understood better what he meant by certain things and how he reacts to things. Like I said, with like just things like when he's in the car, how he has trouble with difficulty driving because he thinks that the garbage down the road is going to blow up, or when he's stressed, and how I need to like give him time to decompress, or when he's thinking of something, it doesn't mean he's ignoring me. It means something else. So things that I would take as a typical relationship issue has nothing to do with our relationship. It's actually things that he's thinking about with his intrusive thoughts. And I should not take that as like, I need to confront him and get into a fight with him now. I actually need to back off, and I need to give him space to come to me about that issue and let him cope and find other strategies to work on our communication style. So maybe even having veterans that have gone through the transition of deployment come and speak with you prior to you coming back from deployment, so that or for military spouses, I feel like it should be like almost like a prerequisite, like premarital counseling. Like, if you're going to marry a veteran, this is what to expect when you marry a veteran. When you go through all that premarital counseling for church, this is what you should expect. You got to get to talk to my husband, and he can give you the big spiel and the lowdown. Like, this is how you communicate with us. This is like veteran 101 infantry speak. So I think that might be a good way to be prepared. I hope that answers your question, Dane. And I remember you from Pie in the Face. You met my husband.
I do believe you answered the question perfectly, actually. I just want to add a little bit to that. Honestly, the leader, the leader in the unit at the time, he has responsibility, even though if he's deployed with his soldiers. Usually the leader will send his spouse, which you also need support as well. But usually the spouses of the captain or whoever is in charge of there will take that responsibility of contacting the other wives and keeping that community, because when you have community, people go through the same thing that you're going through. It make a big difference. Again, when you're in base, around base, all your husbands and wives are deployed, you really don't have family. Your parents won't be going around with you, as I mentioned. So the other spouses has to kind of team up together and make their own community at this point. That will help usually, additional to the resources. And I wish if that's was the case, somebody tell us, right? I still married my my husband though. Even if they told me, I still would marry him. I love you. I know he's gonna watch this video later.
I think I would have done the same thing, but yeah. I think my situation's a little different too. Like we weren't on a base either, like Ryan. He was National Guard. And so he was just deployed. He would go for drills. So we didn't really have that community. So I think more like if you're active duty and you have that community, at least where you're around other spouses, it's a little bit more helpful.
Yeah, I'm sure there's financial reasons for this, but I've always, not that it would apply to my situation, as my wife didn't see combat, but I've always felt that the VA should adopt a kind of more like a social work type case officer assigned to individuals when they come back, and you meet with somebody and there's a period of time like 4 years where this person makes sure that you're cool and knows your family and tries to force you to get the help you need because they speak the lingo and they know that you don't want to go and feel like a wimp, but that's not the I'm an English professor, but my dissertation on my work's in masculinity, so I tend to view it through that lens, and I understand the nature of the type of individuals that are attracted to military service, what it takes to survive combat mentally, the defense mechanisms, etc. It's powerful stuff, and that stuff's going to be real hard to negotiate later on. You're getting your ass shot at. You're worried about the right then and now. You'll figure out the later on. Well, there's people who love you and they want to walk that journey with you, and you're suffering, they're going to suffer too. That's the human nature of human relationships. It'd be nice to have somebody that had a little more knowledge of the nature of the scenario, rather than you roll into the VA or whatever, and you might have a different person each time, and it's kind of like a lot of times the frustration is you just feel like you're starting over again every time you call in and talk to somebody. You got to go through the whole thing all over again. And there's not a lot of continuity. And, if we, with children who suffer trauma that might be homeless or without parents, etc., we can assign them resources to try to help them. I think this country could try to figure out a way to do that with individuals that have been asked to kill other human beings for their country. I think that would be helpful.
Thank you all. So we have room for one more question. This is from a student, Rachel. She actually could not make it today, but she's saying that she's newer to the military life and she has no idea how deployment works, as well as moving to a new base. Her boyfriend is an airman in AIT and they plan to get married after he graduates. And she was curious about some of the difficulties of it. I know we really touched on the difficulties, but the main thing that we took away from it really is the moving process. I don't think we really touched on that too much.
I can speak about the moving because we moved we moved from Columbus, and the movers, the army moved us basically. So the moving process, you definitely have to go through base to fill paperwork and stuff, and they give you, a time frame where the mover will come and pack all your house and everything. It's a chance to throw a lot of things away you don't need. Okay, and they really did a good job. It took them a whole day. Of course, we were there kind of help, but they didn't need our help because they brought all the boxes and everything. And then they told us, okay, we're gonna take them. They put everything on the truck and you're gonna see it next month. Yes, next month. So Jason had to be moving here and go to another training for a whole month. So I had to move by myself with the kids. And my daughter said she wasn't brand new. She cried the whole hours from driving from Columbus, Georgia, all the way to here. Yeah, it was good. And I got a ticket too. Yeah, because I was speeding, which I should not. But I was just so done with the baby crying in the back seat. But anyway, so you came back home to that house, which we are actually right now here. We rented it first, and then when buying it, there's no furniture. So we brought with us some blankets and a crib with me with the car. Of course, again, I'm by myself with 2 kids, and hopefully your student won't be in that case since she probably doesn't have kids yet. So you're going to be by yourself, probably moving in that process. And then a month later, they couldn't bring your stuff. They had to call you and tell you the time change and it became more than a month, and you have to call and inquire about it, and finally arrived. A lot of it broken through the process, lost or wherever. They pay you some back. You have to file a claim for that as well. But yeah, it's a fun process, the moving, and you're gonna do it every 3 years probably. So good luck.
Yeah, I think young couple. I was younger. I was like 30, 31, not necessarily in my 20s. I had been married before, as Bernadette had been before I married my kid's mom, who was the military member. Um, I do think the people I've talked to that are single and based, don't have kids, etc. Um, they feel really lonely. Like it's really important to get out there and just like whatever you do, go to the gym like whatever you do. But if you just sit at home, a lot of times the limited amount then you get to see your spouse, you're really kind of clamping on because you don't really, they're your life preserver. You're out here in this new environment without anybody else. And that's kind of the familiarity of the world, your comfort zone, etc. Well, many individuals, you clamp down harder, especially when they're in the midst of their stuff with the military, which you don't really get to participate in. I don't care how much they try to, that's something they go do. That can put, a lot of tension and strain. So, if you can jump into a community and develop some friendships, but some people are reticent to do that, especially you start moving every 2 or 3 years. Your kids almost always become reticent to do that. They're getting moved around, and what's the point in making friendships because I'm going to leave these people in here anyways. And so I think that's part of the tug and pull too. It's like kind of negotiating that loneliness versus how much to get involved versus how much do I want to keep my distance, because I know the more I invest in these, then the harder it is whenever the military sends us to where, it's not easy.
I don't really have any perspective on that because we didn't move a bunch.
You're a lucky one, huh? Well, all right, so that is all the time that we actually have for today. However, if anyone has any further comments, questions, or concerns, just feel free to reach out to me via email, and then I can connect you guys with the panelists. Panelists, if you'd also like to put your email in the chat as well, I can just leave it on for a little bit so people can get it before they leave. But thank you all for letting us know about your experience and really diving into that. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Grace, for setting this up. This was cool. I've been here at this campus for a few years and don't recall an event like this. Great, and all of you for attending. This is pretty good attendance given all the stuff that's going on today. There's like 160 core events today and famous people showing up to campus and whatnot. So that's cool. Thank you all for spending your time with us. It does make us feel good as people who care about military people, whatever way.
I also want to thank you all for attending. And I want to add one thing as well. The good thing, which no one asked, what is the good thing about being a military spouse? You go to the military balls. I have to say that I miss those. We had so much fun. You dress up like princesses. So it's so cool.
I did have that question, but we did run out of time. So that was a question that I was going to ask.
I miss them so much.
I still love my USAA insurance. It was great.